Every Christmas, I pretended our family was normal. That the laughter at the dinner table wasn't forced. That the gifts weren't just a ritual masking deeper resentments. But nothing could have prepared me for the moment they closed the door in my face, in the freezing December night, and told me I didn't belong to them anymore. This is the story of how a single, cruel act tore the illusion apart. How I stood shivering outside the house I once called home, humiliated, forgotten, and how that moment ignited something I didn't know was buried inside me. Rage. Determination. And a thirst not just for revenge, but for truth. Over 5 chapters, I'll take you through the hidden dynamics of a family that always found ways to make me feel like a burden. The secrets that were never supposed to come out. The lies I was forced to carry. The subtle punishments that grew louder over the years, until silence turned into exile. But this isn't just about pain. It's about survival. It's about building a life from scratch when no one believes in you. It's about making them regret every cruel word, every slammed door, every time they looked through me like I was invisible. By the end, justice won't be just poetic. It will be public aware. Are you watching this from? Before I tell you what happened to me that Christmas night, I want you to think about one thing. What's the coldest moment you've ever felt? Not on your skin, but in your soul. I remember standing there with a paper plate in my hands. I had just stepped out to take a phone call, nothing dramatic, just 10 minutes. When I came back, the door was locked. At first, I thought it was a joke. My little cousin used to play tricks like that. I knocked once, then twice, then harder. No answer. I rang the bell. I could hear movement inside, muffled voices. Laughter. My laughter wasn't included. I called my sister's phone. No answer. I called my mother. Straight to voicemail. My hands were already numb. The snow was falling quietly, as if it too was trying not to get involved. Then the porch light turned off. That was when I knew they had locked me out. I don't even know how long I stood there, frozen in every sense of the word. I wasn't just cold, I was erased. They had made a decision, together, while I was gone. They had waited for a moment. When I wasn't there, and decided I wasn't part of them anymore. That's the part that breaks me still. Not the rejection itself, but the timing. The secrecy. The collective agreement that I didn't deserve warmth, but this wasn't sudden. That night was just the final blow in a long series of cuts. Growing up, I was always the one who had to adjust. My sister could scream, slam doors, disappear for days, and be welcomed back with warm cocoa and soft apologies. I got silent stares for asking too many questions. I got called dramatic for crying when Dad forgot my birthday. Every little thing I did felt like a test I didn't study for. Too loud, too sensitive, too intense. My role was to absorb the tension without releasing any. That Christmas, I had arrived with a gift for everyone. I'd spent weeks trying to pick something meaningful for each person, even though I knew they probably wouldn't do the same for me. It was a ritual of mine, a way to convince myself I still belonged. The irony is that when they finally shut me out, it wasn't even because of something I did that night. It was everything that came before, years of being different. Of not fitting their mold, of refusing to shrink myself just to keep the peace. Maybe they were tired of pretending. Maybe they never pretended at all. I sat in my car that night with the heater on full blast and my dignity shattered. And I asked myself the question I had avoided for years: what if I was never really wanted? Have you ever been treated like a guest in your own family? Like they were just waiting for an excuse to make you leave? Tell me in the comments if you've ever felt something similar, even if it was just a moment. Sometimes the smallest slights carry the heaviest truths. Next chapter, I'll tell you what happened in the hours after I left. And the years of silence that followed. The drive that night felt endless. Not because of the snow. The roads were quiet, the kind of still you only get when the world's already full from celebration, but because something inside me had cracked, and I didn't know how to hold it together. Remember gripping the steering wheel with fingers still stiff from the cold, staring straight ahead like if I blinked, I'd start crying and never stop. I kept waiting for someone to call, to text, to explain. But nothing came. Just silence, and that silence. It stretched for weeks. Then months. And eventually, years. I didn't go home after that night. Not even to pick up my things. What was there to collect, anyway? Old clothes. Some books. A few childhood photos buried in drawers they probably never opened anymore. It was as if I had been erased from the family portrait, carefully edited out, like a smudge that ruined the aesthetic. The worst part wasn't that they pushed me out. It was how easily they seemed to move on. I watched their lives continue through the lens of social media. My sister posting her engagement. My parents smiling at a barbecue. My cousins in matching sweaters the next Christmas, the exact ones I had given them the year before. They kept wearing my gifts, even after cutting me off. Like remnants of a person they didn't need anymore. People say family is forever. But what they don't say is that sometimes, the ones who are supposed to protect you are the ones who write the final goodbye. I think what broke me most was not knowing why. They never gave me a reason. There was no fight, no dramatic betrayal. Just exclusion. Like I'd become inconvenient. Like my presence reminded them of something they didn't want to face, but the signs had always been there. There was that birthday when I turned 17, and no one remembered until dinner. My mother threw together a cake with whatever was in the pantry, and when I got teary-eyed, not because I needed a party, but because I felt forgotten, my father said, "You always make everything about you." Or the time I told my family I got into university, the first one in the family to do so, and my aunt replied, "Oh, so you think you're better than us now?" It wasn't about that night. It was about years of being too much and never enough. About speaking truths they didn't want to hear. About refusing to play the part of the grateful scapegoat. So I stopped trying. I got a job. I moved into a tiny apartment with peeling paint and a broken heater. I made instant noodles and cried on the floor some nights. But I was free. I was alone, but I was free, and in that loneliness, I started to ask a different question. What if I could build something better than what they threw away? Have you ever had to start over from nothing, not just physically, but emotionally? Share it with me in the comments. You never know who might need to hear your story too, and the next chapter, I'll tell you about the first time I saw them again, years later, and how that one encounter changed everything. It had been 3 years since the night they locked me out. 3 birthdays passed. 3 Christmases where the air felt heavier than the cold outside. 3 years of silence, during which I convinced myself I didn't care, until I saw them again, and everything I thought I had buried came rushing back like floodwater. I didn't plan the encounter. Life just threw it at me like some cruel joke. I was at the supermarket, picking up groceries after work, tired and distracted, when I heard the laugh. That laugh. My mother's. Crisp, high-pitched, overly polite, the kind she used when she was trying to seem warmer than she really was. I turned instinctively, and there they were. My parents. My sister. Her new husband. Walking together like nothing had ever happened. For a moment, I froze. I felt 16 again, sitting at the dinner table, trying to join the conversation but always being talked over. I almost backed away, out of fear. But then my mother saw me. She paused, tilted her head, and gave me that familiar, hollow smile, the one she used on strangers she didn't really want to talk to. My father didn't look surprised. My sister narrowed her eyes, like she was expecting this moment and already planning how to stay in control of it. No one said a word. Not even a weak hello. I took a step forward. You weren't even going to pretend we still share blood? My voice was steady. Colder than I expected. Sharper than I felt. My mother's smile twitched. My father shifted his weight from one leg to the other, clearly uncomfortable. "We didn't know if you'd want that," my mother said. Like I was the one who left. Like it was me who slammed the door. My sister scoffed. "You made your choice." That's when something in me snapped. All those years of silence, of building my life from ashes, of questioning my worth, they erupted in a single breath. "I made my choice? You locked me out. On Christmas. Like I was trash. You didn't even call to see if I survived the night." My voice was rising, and people were turning to look. My mother, always obsessed with appearances, scanned the aisle nervously. "Can we not do this here?" And that's when I realized they weren't ashamed of what they did. They were just ashamed it might be seen. I lowered my voice. "You should be grateful I'm doing it here. Because if I ever tell the whole story, really tell it, you'll be the ones hiding." I walked away before they could respond. But as I turned the corner, I saw my sister whisper something to my mother, and they both looked toward me with a kind of panic, not guilt. Panicked. That's when I knew there was more to this story than I understood. Later that night, I pulled out an old notebook where I used to scribble thoughts during my worst days. I flipped through pages and found something I had written the day after they locked me out. "One day, they'll try to erase what they did. But I'll still have the truth." Now, I felt it in my bones, they were hiding something. And if they were afraid of me talking, it meant the truth had power. Have you ever confronted someone who hurt you, only to realize they were more afraid of exposure than of making things right? Tell me in the comments. What would you do if you discovered your pain wasn't an accident, but a plan? In the next chapter, I'll reveal what I found out after digging deeper into the reason they pushed me away, and why it had nothing to do with who I was, and everything to do with what I knew. After that supermarket encounter, I couldn't let it go. Their faces haunted me, not out of nostalgia, but out of suspicion. The way my sister clutched her bag, the urgency in her whisper, my mother's attempt to end the conversation quickly. It wasn't just guilt. It was fear. And fear always means there's something to hide. So I started digging. I didn't have much to work with, just my memories. But memories, when you look at them closely enough, start to point in strange directions. I remembered overhearing phone calls late at night when I was younger. My father whispering in the kitchen. My mother crying behind the bathroom door, saying, "This could ruin everything." At the time, I thought it was about their marriage. But now, it felt different. I went to the county records office during my lunch break one afternoon. I don't know what I was looking for. I just typed in my parents' names, our old address, anything I could think of. That's when I found it. 5 years ago, a year before they locked me out, there had been a legal dispute involving my family. A quiet one, hidden behind generic legalese. But I recognized the names of the other party. The lawsuit had been about property, specifically the ownership of our house. And the strange part? My name had been listed as an heir, and then removed. They had cut me out of the family trust. No conversation. No warning. Just erased. I felt the breath leave my lungs. Suddenly, that night, the door locking, the silence. The complete and calculated exile. It wasn't just emotional rejection. It was strategic. It was financial. I called an old neighbor who had always been kind to me. Mrs. Delaney. She had seen me grow up. I asked her if she remembered anything about that time. She hesitated, then said softly, "Your father came by one day asking if I'd sign something saying you hadn't lived there full time. Said it was for tax reasons." I refused. It felt wrong. I thanked her and hung up, my hands trembling. They had tried to falsify the reality of my life, to make it seem like I didn't belong, legally, financially, emotionally. The exclusion wasn't symbolic. It was paperwork. It was power, and maybe it was fear. Fear that I'd find out. Fear that I'd question it. Fear that I wouldn't go quietly, it's why they never told me why they shut me out. Because telling the truth would have meant admitting the betrayal, the manipulation, the greed. It wasn't about who I was, it was about what I represented, a threat to the version of reality they were trying to create. So I started collecting everything. Emails, texts, old birthday cards that proved I lived there, school documents, pictures. I didn't know what I'd do with them yet, but I was done feeling powerless. I told myself, if they wanted me out of their story, fine. But I'll write my own, and it'll be louder than theirs ever was. Have you ever discovered that someone you trusted was hiding something from you, not just emotionally, but legally, financially, or fundamentally? Did it change how you saw your entire past? Share it in the comments. Someone out there might be in the middle of that same discovery right now, and they need to know they're not alone. In the final chapter, I'll tell you what I did with what I found. And how, in the end, I got my revenge, not with rage, but with something far more powerful. I didn't want revenge at first. Not really. What I wanted was an explanation, an apology, maybe. But when I realized they had turned my erasure into a calculated decision, into a legal maneuver, into something that could have destroyed my future, my silence turned to fire. I didn't hire a lawyer right away. What I did was far more public. I told my story. I started with a post, just a few paragraphs online, sharing what happened that night on Christmas. I left out names. But I didn't hide the truth. I wrote about being locked out. About the silence that followed. About the legal discovery that proved they hadn't just turned their backs on me, they'd rewritten our entire history to benefit themselves. Wasn't expecting it to go viral. But it did. Thousands of people shared it, commented, sent messages. Some told me they had lived the exact same thing, exiled by their own blood, not out of conflict, but convenience. Others thanked me for giving them words for something they had never been able to explain. Didn't ask for attention. I just wanted to be heard, but the attention brought consequences. My parents found out. My sister called me, her voice trembling with rage. "You're humiliating us." And I said, calmly, "No. I'm telling the truth. Humiliation is just the price of pretending for too long." She threatened to sue. Said I was ruining their lives. I said, "You ruined mine first." That's when I realized something powerful. They still cared. Not about me, but about their image. About the illusion they had worked so hard to maintain. And now, it was cracking in public. A local journalist reached out to me. She had read the post and wanted to do a story, not just about my case, but about others like it. Inheritance manipulation. Family erasure. Silent betrayals. I agreed. I gave her the documents. The records. The receipts. The truth. The article made headlines. My face wasn't on the cover, but my story was. And it forced my family to confront something they could no longer hide. They had chosen greed over love. Control over connection. I didn't need money. I didn't file a lawsuit. I didn't want the house. What I wanted was something far more valuable, my voice. And now, they couldn't take it away again. In the months that followed, I rebuilt. I found new friends who felt more like family than my blood ever did. I started speaking publicly about what happened, not for pity, but to remind people that being cast out doesn't mean being worthless. Sometimes, it means you're finally free to become who you were meant to be, and every Christmas now, I don't sit outside anyone's door. I host my own dinner. I invite those who've been left out by others, the misfits, the estranged, the quietly strong. We laugh. We cry. We eat like the world never tried to break us, because it did. But it failed, if you've ever been made to feel like you don't belong. Let me tell you something, your worth isn't defined by who accepts you. It's defined by what you choose to do with your pain. Tell me in the comments, what's one moment in your life when you turned pain Into power? And if you're still in that pain now, know this, your story isn't over. Not yet. Let's turn this comment section into a place of truth. Of healing. Of family, the kind you build, not the kind you're born into. Thank you for listening. To mine, last winter, I walked past my childhood street, not on purpose. I was visiting a friend nearby, and something pulled me in that direction. The house was still there. Same chipped shutters. Same crooked mailbox. But it looked smaller now. Not physically, emotionally. Like the power it once held over me had collapsed into itself. I stood on the sidewalk, watching the windows. For a second, I wondered if they'd see me. If someone might come out and say something, anything. But I didn't wait. I turned around and walked away, not because I was angry. Not anymore. But because I realized I no longer needed their door to open. I had opened my own. And behind it, I had found a life they could never have given me. Because they were never willing to see all of me, I am not the exile they tried to make me. I am the survivor they failed to break. To anyone listening who's still waiting for someone to let you back in, maybe you don't need their house. Maybe you just need your own key, your own table, your own voice, and when you build it, make it wide enough for others like you. The ones who were told they didn't belong. The ones still standing in the cold, waiting, let them in. Thank you for staying until the end. Now tell me, what door have you been waiting to walk through? This space is yours too.